before I get to the plate, it drops on the floor.
Fucking donkey!
What's good, guys? Welcome back to John's Kitchen. My name is Kamarl. On this channel we focus on making beautiful food from around the world and showing you guys the easiest way to make it at home. So if that sounds good, interesting to you, then you may want to consider subscribing. So today we got something a little bit different planned for you. So I was thinking, what can I do to show you guys what it actually means to be a professional chef? So what equipment do you need? How life is in the kitchen? Do you really work ridiculous hours per day? Or even is there a lot of swearing in the kitchen, a lot of effing and blinding? What you see on TV with chefs like Gordon Ramsay.
Fuck off out of here!
Or Marco Pierre White.
Fish, fish, fish!
Is that actual true reflection of how it is to work in the kitchen in today's world in 2020? Or is that just a myth? If you stay tuned for this series, then you'll find out. This is going to be episode 1 of the chef series, where I'm going to be sharing with you my experience as a chef, how I find it, and basically the overall focus you need to have in the kitchen if you really want to pursue this as a career and move up. I'm going to be sharing with you all my tricks and tips that I've learned over the last 13-14 years working as a professional chef in London and in Singapore. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you stick around and you might just learn something a bit different today. On this episode today, we're going to be talking about equipment. What equipment do you need as a chef? Do you need to have your own knives, or does your employer provide you with the equipment that you need? Well, when you're working in the kitchen in general, there's lots of rules, especially if you're working for like a hotel chain, then there's lots of procedures that has to be followed. So generally speaking, if you're working in a hotel, you would have to use the knives provided to you by the hotel. That means that, for instance, if you're going to be chopping fish, in most places you'll have to use a blue knife. If you're going to be chopping meat, then you would have to use a red knife. So basically everything is color coded to make it simple, to really limit the chance of cross-contamination. So there's a lot of procedures that actually in place to make sure that you as a guest are safe and protected and feel like you can actually go to a place, and whether you have allergies or if there's any specific dietary requirements that you have, that you can rest assured that the kitchen is going to be able to manage that properly without getting you sick or you having any kind of adverse reaction. If you're working for like a 4 or 5-star hotel chain or in a high-end restaurant or a restaurant group, then there's certain procedures that you must follow to make sure that there is consistency on a day-to-day basis. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you my knives. So this is my case. As you see, it's a bit worn and a bit trampled, but that's just the outside. It's actually pretty heavy. So it's actually a lot of stuff to be carrying around every day with you. But one thing that, as you move up in the kitchen in general, you don't actually use your knives that much. So I've actually given away a lot of knives during my career, because as I move up, it's more so about menu creation and recipes and showing and teaching and basically sharing your knowledge with your team so they can improve their skills. So it's a lot more mental as opposed to physical. Obviously you still have the physicality involved. So for these times, you will need to be using your own knives as well. Anyway, I prefer to use my own knives. Generally speaking, I prefer to use Japanese knives, because honestly the Japanese make the best knives. You know, if I wasn't going to use Japanese knives, maybe I would use something like German knives or something in that region, because the steel is actually pretty good. It's a solid steel and it's not too hard to sharpen. In terms of having a sharp knife that is fairly easy to maintain, Japanese knives for me, there's nothing else that I would rather use. My first decent set of knives at the time I thought they were decent, were Global. So I spent a lot of money on getting a Global knife set, and honestly, very bad. On the handle along the Global, it's very thin, so as you're actually using it for hours and chopping or peeling or dicing or mincing, whatever other kind of mundane jobs that is actually involved with being a not so senior chef, by the time you finish the end of the day or the end of the week, you've got blisters forming right here on your hand, because it's just a lot of work for a very narrow, hard knife. Sorry Global, don't sue me, but your knives. Make sure you stick around until the end of the video, because I'm going to show you all the knives that I actually use, and you don't want to miss that part, trust me. But first I'm going to go through the actual equipment that I use on a day-to-day basis in the kitchen. One of the things that I use on a daily basis in the kitchen is a fish scaler. By using this, you can actually scale most fish very, very easily. This is actually a Japanese style fish scaler, and honestly, when it comes to scaling fish, it's very easy. With this, it will take me maybe, to do a 5-kilo salmon, I can descale it in a couple of minutes if I decide not to use my knife to take off the scales. So something like this on Amazon you can get for about between 15 and 30 pounds. It depends on the link that you click on, but very useful. So if you're going to be descaling any fish, even at home, I would suggest you get yourself one of these, because it's a lot easier and you'll save yourself a lot of time. Plus it's a lot safer to use one of these as opposed to using your knife in the kitchen. Next thing, peeler. Next thing you need is one of these, a peeler. This is actually a speed peeler. Honestly, the quality is pretty, but you know, you can use it for a good couple of months before it actually falls apart on you. And in a way, they're pretty cheap, so you can actually just buy yourself a new one. Anywhere between like between 3 to 10 pounds, depending on also the link that you click on. So here I have 2 sets of fish tweezers. Sounds a bit strange, you know. Now I'm just thinking about eyebrows.
How I shape and maintain my brows.
But these are not for your eyebrows, this is for pin boning fish. This is more of the traditional kind of pin boner. Once you fillet the fish and you want to remove the bones along the spine, you can use one of these to do it. But honestly, this one is actually pretty hard. If the fish is very fresh, it's very hard to get the bones out. So when you're using this one, generally it will either slip, or sometimes what will happen is that you actually break the bone and you might have to actually dig into the fish, and you don't want to do that because you're messing up the actual quality of the fish. So this one is not so good. I keep it in a way just in case, because you never know, maybe I might lose my other one. But generally speaking, I try not to use this one unless I have to. For deboning salmon, it's not too bad because salmon have pretty big bones that are quite easy to remove. For any fish that has more fine bones, this is not the one, believe me. So then I got this one.
Another one.
So this one is actually more like pliers. So you just give it a little squeeze. So that means you're actually not even applying that much pressure, and then it will just clamp down very tight. So imagine you're actually digging into the fish. It's also got a curved head as well, so you'll be able to get those kind of dodgy angles. Pinch, and then literally it's that easy to pull out the bone. So this one, honestly, is a lifesaver. If you are a professional chef, or if you're a chef in the kitchen, or even at home, I would get one of these. It's a bit more pricey. It will cost you anywhere between 30 and 40 pounds, but honestly, money well spent. If you get yourself one of these, there's no comparison. In terms of removing bones, this is the one. So this one is from Mary, I think the company is, or Japan, from Japan. I don't know if that's the name of the company or just what it's called, but this is a winner. Good one, guys. The next thing I have is a good pair of scissors. You know what I mean? In the kitchen, you need one of these, whether you're cutting some paper for your French fries holder, or if you're going to be removing some fins from fish, whatever it is, get yourself a good pair, quality sturdy scissors. So here I have a pair of fancy chopsticks. Basically, there is actually a traditional name for this, but I can't remember what it is right now. I'll check on Google, but anyway, I'll list it down below in the description box, the actual name. Very handy, very good for when you're doing some kind of sashimi, just so you don't overhandle the fish and you can plate nicely. This is the more traditional way. So the end will usually be stainless steel. I've actually worked with a couple chefs in the past that have like silver or even gold. Next thing that you will need is a massive spoon. This spoon is massive, as you can see, but when you're basting, imagine that you're cooking some chicken or some beef or even some fish, and you add some butter and you want to give it a good basting, this spoon is the one. Or even just for plating like a side of mushrooms or whatever. But as a chef in the kitchen, if you don't have one of these big spoons, you're just completely wasting your time. You need to get yourself one of these bad boys. For sure, I don't think there's going to be anyone else at work that's going to have a bigger spoon than you.
Surprise, motherfucker.
It's actually bigger than my head almost. Look at that, massive. Here I have a quenelle spoon. You see? Basically, it's the shape of the spoon. So whenever you're doing like a quenelle, like ice cream or cream or something like that for a side, you get a nice beautiful shape by using one of these. I used to have more of these around in my knife case, but as they're very sought after in the kitchen, if you leave it around for even a couple of minutes, some random chef is going to end up putting that in their pocket, because find the perfect quenelle spoon is very hard. Very, very hard. There's actually some companies now that specialize in just having quenelle spoons. Obviously marketed as chefs, because as a chef, if you don't have one of these, I mean, your quenelles are going to be terrible. So the next one I have here is some pH strips. Most chefs, I would say, in most restaurants, you won't need some of these, but if you're actually into fermenting or anything of that kind of nature, pickling or anything like that, just to be safe, to make sure that what you're actually producing is safe for the guests to eat, you should get yourself one of these. Some of these you can get from Amazon as well, or if you're living in a country that has iHerb on the internet, look them up and you can get yourself one of these. Basically what this does is, so if you see the colors along here, it will basically give you a little gauge to let you know if when the food is edible or when it's safe to eat, basically. So for this particular strip, you want to make sure that whatever you're producing is less than 3.6. Then you know that for sure whatever you're producing is safe for the guests to eat. That's what's most important, you know, because when guests come to your restaurant, they're trusting you to make sure that you're producing good, safe food, and the last thing you want to do is get someone sick by not investing in your equipment, basically, to make sure that you're producing safe food or safe edible food. So as you see here, it's just a little strip that's got a little blue pad at the end. You dip that into whatever the pickle or the fermentation that you're doing for 15 seconds, and then the color will change if it gets to the color that it should be. And away you have the chart on the side, so whenever you do it, you can double check the color. The next thing I would say you need is a good boning knife. I mean, every chef's honestly should invest in one of these. So if you're going to be cleaning meat, or you know, anything that involves working with bones, like meat bones or something like that, if you have one of these knives, it will make your life a lot easier as well. I've actually had this one for years. Roughly, I would say, if I had to guess, or if I had to put a number on it, about maybe almost 10 years. It's a very long time I've had this. So I mean, if you look after your knives well, you won't really have much problems with it. So make sure you invest in a good one of these. The next knife that I have is, I would say every chef has one of these kind of knives. So this is basically my standard day-to-day chef knife. I actually bought this knife from somebody I used to work with for super cheap. I think he sold it to me for, yeah, 60 quid. I actually bought this for 60 pounds, so very, very cheap. It was a bit of a deal for me. When he gave it to me, it's very blunt, but I could see that the knife was decent quality. So it didn't take me long just to sharpen it up and make sure that it's like razor sharp. But for chopping herbs or for slicing and dicing or mincing, this knife is very good and very easy to use. And also because the metal is quite soft, it's very easy to maintain, which is the main thing. When you're actually starting out as a chef in the kitchen and then you start using, say, whetstones to sharpen your knives, honestly, you're going to have so many knives that you're going to destroy. But it's just part of the process of learning and learning how to actually use the stone correctly. When I was first using stones, literally this is how a knife should look. At some point it was like the part here was all inside, the tip was bigger than the base.
No! God, please, no! No!
At that point you can't use the knife anymore, so it's just time to get rid of it and then invest in a new one. So the next knife I have here is called a santoku, I believe. I think that's the correct pronunciation, but you know, it could be a little bit off with that. This knife is perfect for slicing or dicing or doing things like julienne or anything that involves kind of intricate knife work. This is actually a perfect knife to do that with. This knife I actually got also a chef that I used to work with who actually went to Japan. He basically came back to England with a lot of knives and gave us an amazing price on it. So obviously once I saw this knife, I actually instantly fell in love with it.
Oh my god! Wow!
And it might sound strange to fall in love with a knife, but when this is your trade and your craft, having the perfect knife is like, I don't know, what can I compare it to? A footballer needs football boots, you know what I mean? It's all about having the right tools to perform the job well. This knife is actually folded steel, or it's actually quite a soft steel, so it's very easy to sharpen and to maintain, which I quite like. There are some knives out there that are made out of things, say like blue steel, which is a lot harder, which means it will keep its edge, the sharpness, a lot longer, but it's a lot harder to sharpen. So if you're in a rush, honestly, you don't want to spend 35-40 minutes sharpening one knife. So getting something that's a bit softer metal will also save you time in the future. Also here I have a paring knife. This is actually from a company called Mac. So I actually bought quite a few Mac knives when I was, you know, earlier on in my career, because also the metal is quite soft and they actually hold their edge very, very good. But the thing I didn't actually like about Mac is the handle is actually quite narrow. It's not actually the most comfortable knife to work with, as opposed to a knife here. You see the handle here is actually a bit longer, which also means it's a bit more comfortable to work with if you've got big hands. If you've got small hands, it doesn't matter. Mac is the company for you. But if you're like me and you have bigger than average hands, you want to get yourself something a bit more comfortable if you're going to be using it for hours in a day. But anyway, this knife is a general paring knife. Very good, very sharp, you know, very nimble, so it's a good knife to have. Mac do reasonably good knives. Small hands, Mac is the company for you. If you have big, reasonable hands, don't go for Mac. Next knife is your trusty Victorinox bread knife. So I think if you're a chef in Europe or even in the States, I think everyone is familiar with the Swiss-made Victorinox knives. Actually, they do good bread knives, I have to say. They stay sharp for fairly long, you know, nice, even, smooth cuts. So yeah, for bread knives, I would actually recommend Victorinox. It's a good knife to use. Plastic handle, as you see, so as long as you look after it, I mean, you'll have it for years. I'll give a thumbs up for Victorinox. So the next knife I have here is called a Yanagiba. I think also my pronunciation is good on that. Well, I say it's good in a way. So this is a case that's actually made out of bamboo. I think it's bamboo. It could be cedar wood. So one of the two in a way. But anyway, it's a good case to have on a knife because it keeps your blade very sharp and protects the knife. So this knife is actually also known as a sashimi knife, but the traditional name is a Yanagiba. Whatever the fish it is that you're cutting, you just hold the top of the knife like so. You put your finger on the top of the blade just to make sure that you have a lot of control of the knife. So if you hold it like this, the knife will move and you don't really have a lot of control. But if you place your finger on top, it acts as a stabilizer so you can have more control. Take the knife, place your two fingers on top of the fish, and then you will use one long motion to slice the fish. You don't want to start jagging at that because it will break up the fibers of the fish and give it a very bad texture. So you want to let the knife do all the work. Beautiful knife, like this one. It's my kitchen baby. Very good. So the next knife I have here is called a deba or deba. So also it's a Japanese knife, and this knife is predominantly used for filleting fish. So it's a very heavy knife, it's very top heavy. So you can see, for instance, from here, you see how thick the blade is. So it's actually designed like this, so if you're cutting through bones, it's actually very easy. Actually the top of this knife, which is very different to most knives, whereby the handle will kind of be almost a bit more heavy or kind of balance out. This knife is literally very top heavy. If I hold it like this, it will just literally fall down, because it's designed for filleting fish and cutting through bones. When filleting fish, honestly, there's no knife better than one of these. This knife is absolutely amazing. It's like cutting through butter. It's that sharp, it's that easy to maintain, and because of that actual design of it, so when you're actually filleting the fish, this side, also I'm left-handed, so actually that's something I should actually said in the first place. So as a lefty, I have to have my left-handed knife. So most people obviously are right-handed. So as a right-handed person, you will not be able to use these knives. It's only for left-handed people. And the reason why I know, as a right-handed person, you will not be able to use these knives, because my first ever deba that I actually bought was for right-handed people. But I was like, that's rubbish. Right-handed, left-handed. Bearing in mind then I was a commie. So I thought that's absolute rubbish. You can actually use whatever knife you want. So being the naive young commie chef that I was, I actually spent £180 on a Mac deba, which I could absolutely not use at all. As a left-handed person using a right-handed deba, the blade, this part, is on the other side. So normally this part right here would be against the spine of the fish. Instead of going close to the spine and removing the fillet from the fish, I would actually just cut straight into the fillet of the fish, and I had absolutely no control of it. So yeah, that was a complete waste of money. So if you're a left-handed person, buy a left-handed knife. If you're a right-handed person, buy a right-handed knife. But anyway, regardless, this knife is like the piece de resistance, especially when you work with a lot of fish. When I design the menu, I actually like to use a lot of fresh flavors, including fish, raw fish, cooked fish, grilled, whatever it is. I actually like using fish a lot in the menus. So if you're gonna have a very fish heavy menu, you're definitely gonna need a knife that's actually capable of going through it. Also, if you see here the fancy hammering on here, you can see also my initials on it. So that's also a good job from the wife. And then the same again of the prefecture and the region and the person who actually made the knife. Nice. So that's actually it. Those are the actual knives that I use in the kitchen on a day-to-day basis. You see, actually I have quite a few. They can be pretty pricey, but you know, it's just investing in your trade, making sure you actually have the tools that you need to perform your job to a high standard. If you're really considering being a chef, you don't need to get the exact knives that I have. I actually recommend to get something a lot cheaper in the beginning, because as you progress in the kitchen, honestly, and learn how to sharpen your knives properly, they're gonna have a lot of mishaps. Sometimes in a busy kitchen, maybe another chef will take your knife and they might drop it on the floor, or this kind of stuff. So I would definitely suggest, if you're starting out your career, or even if you're just a home cook, I would recommend investing in some knives, but you don't need to get something that's super pricey. You know, just something that you can work well with, something that you're comfortable with, and something that you would like to use on a daily basis. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's something different, something that we don't normally do, but if you'd like to hear some stories of what it's actually like to work in a professional kitchen, believe me, I've got some interesting stories, so you might want to hear these ones. The first good service I had, the first shit service that I had, burning a steak or burning some fish, or even the worst, when before I get to the plate, it drops on the floor. Fucking donkey! If you like the video, give it a like, smash the subscribe button, and I'll see you here for the next one, guys. So have a good week, and I'll see you soon. Peace.